Most churches expect the summertime slump, but growth can happen. It's not all about numbers, though. That's what we're talking about this week on the Church Revitalization Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast, brought to you by the Malphurs Group team, where each week we tackle important, actionable topics to help churches thrive. And now, here's your hosts, Scott Ball and AJ Matthew.
Welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast. My name is Scott Ball, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host and my friend, AJ Matthew. And today we are brought to you by Faith Street. Faith Street is an iOS and Android app that brings congregations together. It strengthens people's commitment to the church and to each other. It builds community by prompting prayer and mindfulness, generosity, reflection, fellowship, and teaching as daily practices. Faith Street helps you and your staff spend less time on social media and communications and rely less on Facebook and the weekly email newsletter. If you're interested in checking this out, go to faithstreet.com/Malphurs. Church Revitalization Podcast listeners can receive 20% off. So go to faithstreet.com, faithstreet.com/Malphurs, MALPHURS. AJ, it is, I don't know if it's officially summertime yet. I don't know. I know that it's summertime in people's minds. I know that there's like an official day for official start of summer. That's weird.
Yeah, it's not. But, it's cultural summertime.
It's cultural summertime.
United States cultural summertime.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I apologize to all of our Southern Hemisphere friends where it's not summertime right now. It's winter. But here in the Northern Hemisphere, it is summertime. And traditionally, summertime is associated with sort of a slump. You know, people go on vacation, people just check out mentally from church, they sleep in, they go to brunch, they want to be outside. In fact, I think Mother's Day is usually one of the highest attended Sundays in a church after sort of Easter and Christmas. And Father's Day, I think, is one of the least attended Sundays in most churches because dads want to be out and, grilling or whatever. But today, what we're talking about on the podcast is leveraging the summer for growth. Now, we're not talking about growth necessarily numerically. We're not sure that you can overcome all of the people who are leaving for vacation, but there are other ways to grow. And in fact, maybe you would reach some new people this summer and have some new people come and be a part of your church. So that's the topic today.
Yep.
Has this been your experience, AJ, in all your years in attending and leading in churches? Summertime's usually hard for churches, yes?
I don't know. I have mixed emotions about the idea of the summertime slump. There's, I guess you'd have to say for sure, it does happen, but, and we've talked about this before, I think it's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy that I think it is self-perpetuating. Churches think everybody's gone, therefore they scale back, therefore people are less engaged in doing stuff. I think we can overcome that.
All right, that's okay. Yeah. I see what you're saying. So you're saying, well, like a lot of churches stop doing small groups or Sunday school or whatever over the summertime. And that sort of signals to the church, hey, church isn't important in the summertime.
Yeah.
I can see that. I don't know. In my experience in leading churches, I've done both. I've done, where we stop and where we keep going. And inevitably, every time I've kept going in the summertime, it's just a small handful of people who participate.
Yeah. I think this has been increasing. I bet over the last couple of decades, this has become even more of a thing to the point where I think we're almost signaling to people, take the summer off. We'll see you in the fall. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, I think even if we take these cultural considerations, or this cultural conditioning into consideration, I should say, that doesn't mean that we should just abandon the summer for whatever. And so we actually have some key ways we think that your church can engage differently in the summer than it does during the school year. So it's not about disengagement, it's about engaging differently. Mm-hmm. And some growth can happen, some different kinds of growth can happen as a result of that. So let's dive into these points, AJ.
Yeah, so number one is to be family focused and thinking of ways in which you could maybe instead of saying, hey, families, we know you're all 100% of our church is going to be gone for the next 90 days. There's no possible way we could do church together, which is factually not true. So instead, you're saying, well, what are families going to be doing anyway? And how could we engage with them that way? Or we've got a few points that we've noted down, Scott. It's really more of how can we leverage what we already have or assets or events that we can use to draw people in maybe in some new ways that they wouldn't have previously.
Yeah, the United States and Canada are not like Europe. So I know we have got some European listeners. So I hope this isn't offensive to you, European listeners. I understand that if you live in France, for example, you're going to take off the whole month of July from work. That's the reality. But in the US, you're maybe taking a week off for vacation somewhere over the course of the summer. You're maybe gone for a week, maybe 2 at the most, or something like that. So work doesn't stop for most American families. That's a fact. But school does for most American families. And so there is a need from the family end to occupy and entertain and keep busy kids, keep them busy. And so you've got summer camps and things like that, but there are gaps in that where there's not a planned activity. And your church might have VBS, and so you're helping to meet a need for 1 week. In fact, I'm sure you know these kids in your VBS, right? The kids who just go from one VBS to the next. Like their parents just sign them up. Yeah, you know these kids. Have you seen these kids? These poor kids, they'll go to like 5, they'll all go to Shipwrecked or whatever that thing is. Like they'll just go to 5 different versions of the same VBS at 5 different churches on 5 different weeks. But parents are like, they need a place to do something with their kids that's not having them play Fortnite for 8 hours a day, every day. And so be families focused, not just the families in your church, but recognize that you are a community resource and can be a community resource. Do you have a playground that you could indicate is open for use? I mean, people assume that a public playground is open, but would they, if you're in a neighborhood, if you're a neighborhood church and you have a playground, do people assume that they can come on your property and play on that playground during the week? Make that known. Do you have a coffee shop that you only use on Sundays? Open that space up and let it be used throughout the week so parents can come in and get some work done on their laptop while the kids play on a playground, or you have some kids' activities out, some coloring sheets. The question isn't, what do you need to create in order to be families focused? We're just asking, what do you have? What resource do you have that you could open up to families to be used throughout the rest of the week during the summer? Host a block party, and don't just advertise it with your church people. Like, advertise it in your community. Here's something that we're doing on a Wednesday night to entertain people and bring stuff in. So think about things that you could do. It doesn't have to be extravagant. One thing that is maybe more extravagant, it's way too late for you to plan this one out, but just a quick plug, AJ, for share what Josh Fortney, who's on our team, what he does. I think what he does is really interesting. And so maybe earmark this or bookmark this episode and think about it later when you actually could act on this. Right now, it's too late, but share what Josh does. I think it's cool.
Yeah. Hosted summer camps. So Josh is with, am I going to get the name right, Scott? Skylark Camps. Yeah. And so Skylark partners with churches to bring the camp experience to your church. You only need to, and I don't want to overstep my knowledge of this, but from what I understand, your church only basically needs to offer the space, and Skylark has the team and everything else to bring camp to your church, not for a week, but for an extended time during the summer.
I think it's 10 weeks.
Yeah, it's long. Yeah, to cover, that childcare need that a lot of families, that crunch that they are in every summer for,
and it's something that's positive, like great activities. It's, to talk about Jesus. And it's built in a way where kids could engage for just a couple of weeks, or they could be enrolled in all 10 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's
probably too late for your church, but I don't know.
Google it's too late.
Camps and
for sure, it's too late.
Maybe
for this year.
I don't know. Google them anyway.
Probably. But just think about that. Like, start thinking about, okay, let's not throw the summer away. How can we be a resource to families in our community, not just our families at our church, but a resource to families in the community over the summer? So, number one, leverage the summer for growth by connecting with families in different ways. Families are desperate. It's not like the school year. In the school year, their calendars are full. They've got this activity and this sport and this. In the summertime, they're on the hunt for ways to occupy their kids. Trust me. If you were to offer things to occupy kids, not every family, but a certain segment of families will take advantage of the opportunity that you provide. So don't sleep on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Let's move on.
Yep. And do it well though. Because otherwise,
right. Yeah.
Now if you're not doing it well, then you might be turning people off and they're like, have a bad taste in their mouth. All right. Number 2, this is just focusing on things going out in the community. So not utilizing what you have, but utilize what somebody else is already doing, things that are already happening around your area, which, by the way, Scott, all right, so you plugged Europe. We've got listeners, viewers from all over the world. All right. I just want to single out here, South America, Africa, Australia, Asia, India. Okay.
I was singling out Europe because in Europe, they take an extended holiday.
I just don't want everybody else to go, they're like, hey, I'm not in Europe or America and I'm listening. So
yeah, fair enough.
All right.
I also, at the beginning of the episode, AJ, I pointed out that it's not summertime in the Southern Hemisphere. We also have Southern Hemisphere listeners.
So we don't, but we wanted them to keep listening. And now I just don't want to offend and think
this is like what point is this under?
It's not under any point. I just want to say hi to the rest of the world.
Hello, rest of the world. Okay, moving on. So point number 2 is
being present at community events.
Thank you. All right. Yeah. So you don't need to. So if you listen to point number 1 and you think, I don't have the people, we're a church of 50 people. We don't have a playground. We don't have a coffee shop. We can't pull together a block party because we don't have the money. Whatever. Fine. Great. So discard point number 1. Move on to point number 2. Your community is already doing stuff. They have, in our town, I don't think they call it this anymore, but I live in Bristol, Tennessee. It's a border town between Tennessee and Virginia. So our main street downtown, one half of it is in Tennessee, one half of it is in Virginia, which is kind of a fun thing. At any rate, on Friday nights in the summertime, they do something called Border Bash. They do it's almost like a downtown music, and then booths get set up by different folks. So we used to, when I was planting a church here, we would do every Friday night, we'd go down to Border Bash, set up a booth. And I see churches do this, AJ, and they just want to pass out information about their church. Mm-hmm. And maybe they're giving away bottled water or something like that, which is nice. But people don't care. Like they'll pay $1. They will gladly pay $1 for bottled water to not have to come and get information from your church about your church. Just being honest.
Yeah.
So instead, do something for kids.
Yeah, provide something.
Provide something that's fun. So and free. So we would we did a variety of different things. We did face painting one time for free. Although that one's tough because someone actually has to be good at face painting, which is difficult. We bought like 1,000 temporary tattoos, AJ, on Oriental Trading Post. Not a sponsor. And We would just let kids pick whatever temporary tattoo they wanted to do, and we'd put 3 of them on or whatever. And of course, we passed out information about the church, but parents loved it because it was something free for their kids. The kids had a good time. They checked out something about our church or whatever. And at this point, we hadn't launched yet, AJ, so we weren't even a church yet. So I don't want to hear a church say, "Oh, we can't do that. We've only got a few people." We weren't even a real church at this point, and we were able to do it. So find out what your community is doing and be present there. It doesn't have to be a bunch of people. It took 2 or 3 volunteers for us to do that each time.
Yeah.
A couple hours on a Friday night, and you get to listen to the music. Have a good time.
Yeah. Yeah. So just watch those community calendars. There's lots of Facebook groups. There's things on the city website, other organizations. This is also a great networking opportunity for you as a pastor or other church leaders to be networking with people that are organizing these kinds of things. You never know what kind of relationship.
Will you meet crazy people down at those things? Yes. Will people come to your church because you were down there? No, but that's not even necessary. I mean, I don't want to say no definitively. Yeah, maybe, but that's not the point. The point is to be visible in your community doing something.
There you go. All right. Number 3, make some time for planning. Summertime is a great planning time for the staff to just to be thinking ahead. Of course, everybody, since it's the summertime slump, everybody knows now that September is going to be back to church. And so you can certainly utilize this time in a really productive way to be preparing for that ministry season.
Yeah, there's a couple mistakes that are made here. So the first one, obvious, is that we don't use the summer for planning, that we wait to start planning until right before the fall, in which case it's kind of too late to implement much of anything. The other mistake is that we assume that we have to have 100% attendance in order for us to do it. So we go, "Oh, well, not every person can be there, so we can't do the planning." Mm-hmm. That's silly. If you can get 80% of the right people in the room, that's enough to move forward. That's the quorum you need to be able to engage in planning. So don't assume that just because you can't get 100% of your staff or 100% of your board or whatever at a planning meeting that you can't do it. You can. I would also be strategic about it. So don't say, "Yeah, we're going to use the summer for planning," and you're doing it in little drips and drabs. You know, if you're doing something like the strategic envisioning process, we have a really intense 2 days. It's a lot of hard work. It's exhausting, but we get a lot done in 2 days in the planning phase. And then we have kind of an implementation kickoff that we do that's a few hours. So I would maximize the time, but find a time. You don't have to. Don't assume that just because it's summertime and people are taking vacations that there's no time in the summer where there's overlap where most of you are here. There probably is. You know, it might be a random week in June or a random week in July or August where there's a critical mass of your leadership there.
Yeah, take advantage of, just do whatever you can. Don't write the whole summer off, I guess, is the point. Number 4, take time for team building, but don't fall backwards off the stage and expect people to catch you.
That's trust fall or ropes course or
maybe your team likes that kind of, I don't know. You can do that if you want to. Talk about relationship building, look more casual, just, especially if all of your, staff or volunteer leaders don't have as much going on in the summertime, there's plenty of time then to grab a lunch or a coffee and just, work on those relationships. That's going to fuel more great ministry in the fall and throughout the coming years than a lot of other things will. Just getting to know people, and summertime is a great time to do that.
Yeah, do some stuff outside, and kind of make an informal rule of don't talk shop. Like, find a time to go and do something with your staff or your board that's fun. Go on a picnic, do some stuff with your families, and just don't talk shop. It's amazing what happens amongst a group of leaders when you're more invested in each other's lives and you understand what's going on with them personally and what's going on with their family. Especially if you serve on a board, AJ, where maybe some of the guys have more white collar jobs and some of the guys have more blue collar type jobs, and that influences the way they make decisions. That's going to influence the way they think about finances and how the church spends its finances. And so lots of times in a board meeting type situation, there can be conflict there because of those differing perspectives on life. But when you can get that same group of people outside the boardroom and doing some sort of just fun activity together where they can start talking about their lives and their careers and their families, those barriers begin to break down a little bit so that they're actually more effective when they get back into the boardroom and talking about business type things or the business of the church, or the ministry of the church. Yeah. So take time to do that. Enjoy the beautiful weather. If you have it, if you don't live in Arizona or something where it's like 140 degrees outside, if you've got some nice things you can do together to build some relationships. Yeah. It'll make your team more effective.
Right. Yeah. That'll pay dividends for years to come. Okay. And finally, our last one is reset the scoreboard. So, and there's a lot we could say probably on this topic here, Scott, but coming out of, we've just had the most insane year that most of us have ever had in our lifetimes. And it's probably the ways maybe that you measured success previously are not going to be the same. And the things that are going to show that you're beginning to get back on track are going to be different than they were in 2019. So consider maybe where your church is now. Take some time. This would be a great staff retreat activity. Take some time to just think about what has happened over the last year. Where are we today? And what do we need to be looking at this fall and in the time to come of what is the new success going to look like for us? For some of you, it might be, you've maybe only even been open for in-person worship for a little while, and you've got like 35% of your church showing up, or 60% or 80%. But what's the fall going to look like in this phase of your ministry in this season? And what do we need to be measuring to see if we're making progress in recovery?
Yeah, this is a really good point. And I think that I want to be sensitive that your mileage may vary on this. I've worked with churches all across the United States, literally coast to coast this year, in North and South, and everywhere I go, the context is just a little bit different. So I'm sensitive to that. But especially if you're in the South, the South of the United States or the Southeast, you need to start shifting from thinking, and I want to say this is probably true almost anywhere in the United States right now, because almost all restrictions are removed in almost every place at this point. So you need to start shifting from thinking we're at 60% of our congregation to this is 100% of our congregation.
Right. Yeah.
That's the mindset shift that has to happen first, AJ, is people go. And so instead of thinking of, we have this magical 30% or 20% or 40%, they're out there and they're coming back. Like, the mindset shift is where you are right now. Again, this might not be true for every church and every location, but for the most part, where you are today in summer 2021 in the United States. So I want to be very sensitive. That's 100% of what your church is, in all likelihood, because most churches in the United States since Easter have been able to go back to some version of normal. Even if there were masks involved or whatever, most capacity restrictions are lifted, most places and things like that. So who you are today is 100% of what your church is right now. So reset your scoreboard. What does success look like? Maybe we're going to care a little bit less about attendance and more about engagement. We're going to look more at how people are progressing and the steps that they're taking and in discipleship versus just how many people show up on a Sunday morning. There's a church I have the privilege of working with right now that's actually doing an incredible job, AJ, thinking about their Awana program. If they're listening, they're going to know I'm talking about them. And I hope that they don't mind I'm using them as an example here. But their Awana program, before the pandemic, was wildly popular in terms of numbers. In fact, just gangbusters numbers of kids showing up. But as they've done the analysis, AJ, it's almost 100% kids from other churches. Very, very small number of community kids showing up. Almost none. Mostly just kids from other churches. And so it's an enormous resource burden on the church, particularly in terms of volunteers, that's needed to run the program. And they had to pause all of it because of COVID and where they're at geographically. Like they weren't allowed to have it, basically. They're just now allowed to have it at full capacity, and they're wondering if they should bring it back. With all the resources that it takes to run it, in terms of people and money and all of that. Yes, it was well attended. If that was the only metric that mattered, high attendance, then it's a no-brainer. Yes, of course. But that's not the only metric that matters, AJ. And so these are the kinds of questions your team should be asking. Just because something was well attended, is this something that should still take a disproportionate amount of our resources, or should we readjust?
That's exactly the mindset that we're talking about on this point. So I hope that this will be a time for you as church leaders to, just think about what were we doing? What should come back? This gets into kind of our whole discipleship pathway process, Scott, that we do in workshop is, let's look at our ministries. What do we do now? Or what did we used to do? And what really should we leverage to the greatest kingdom expansion in the future to use our resources best? So this is a great time to have that look at your church.
Awesome. One other key way that we can shift our scoreboard and really readjust our perspective is that we learned over the pandemic is a move from everything being in person to the value of thinking about things digitally, which reminds me, one key way.
I already see you smiling.
One key way that we can leverage technology for discipleship is through an app, a tool, a resource like our friends at Faith Street. AJ,
you had me at the beginning. I got to admit, I didn't see it at the beginning.
Tell our friends about Faith Street.
Faith Street is a great app that your church could utilize to communicate, to foster relationships, especially in a small group model. That's really great. But yeah, it connects people together. It allows you to communicate in effective ways and to have people getting involved. So all the things that we talked about today would be great use of the Faith Street app.
Yeah.
Thanks, Scott.
And jokes aside, I love that it's a tool that's developed for church. I mean, so much of what churches are doing on Facebook is good, but you're trying to force that square peg into a round hole. You're trying to take a social networking resource and transform it into a disciple making tool. With Faith Street, you're not having to do that. You're taking a disciple making tool to do disciple making things. And so go to faithstreet.com/Melfers, get 20% off their service. Check it out, see if it's a fit for you. I believe they've got a demo that you can check out. The folks over there will hook you up and let you kick the tires a little bit. So faithstreet.com/Melfers, check it out. AJ, anything you want to say to wrap up our discussion here about leveraging the summer for growth? I hope that people understand that we weren't just talking about numerical growth. In fact, you shouldn't anticipate necessarily, although it may happen, numerical growth over the summer, but you can have evangelistic growth over the summer. You can have staff growth in terms of relational growth. You can have growth in your you're planning for the future. So there's all different kinds of growth that matter, and maybe matter more than just adding the number of people in your seats.
Yeah, focus on that kind of growth first, and numerical growth will likely come, and it'll be more sustainable than it would have if you were just trying to fill seats. So yeah, do that. Hey, this has been episode 92 of the Church Revitalization Podcast, and you can read today's article at malfersgroup.com/92. We're glad that you are with us, and we'll be back again ready for you next week. God bless you.